The readings from Ephesians 5, 1 to 21. Therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not even be named among you, as is proper among saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place. But instead, let there be thanksgiving. For you may be sure of this, that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure, or who is covetous, that is, an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partners with them. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart, giving thanks always and for everything to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ.
Thanks, Murray. It's going to be God's word to us today, and it is a long passage. It's a very light-hearted passage, as you picked up. But just so you know, we're not going to try and unpick every argument from the passage. You'll see I'm going to pull from all over the show. So if you do have your own Bible, it may be helpful to just see where I'm darting along from time to time. It's going to be hard to constantly put passages up on the screen. But if you're visiting us, or if you're new here, or if you are just back from holiday and this is your first day back at church, welcome. We are in week 2 of a 5-week series called Screens, Scrolling, and Spirituality. We're looking at digital media in particular, how it is shaping us as people, how it's shaping us as Christ followers in particular. And if you missed last week, whether you are here and you're a follower of Jesus or not, let me just catch you up. We basically gave a sort of high-level theology of technology last week, a bit of an overview of what the Bible has to say about tech in general, and this is what we arrived at. Number one, we are actually meant to invent new technologies. That's what God has called us to do, to steward God's creation for human flourishing. But because of human sin and God's grace, technology actually can be both good and bad. That's kind of where the scriptures land. You see scriptures entering the Bible in quite a bad way and being used in a multitude of ways, including good ways, by God himself throughout the rest of the scriptures. And so what we said was, with any new technology, we need to ask good questions about it. Good questions. Can we receive this? Should we reject this? How could we redeem this? Because all technology comes with trade-offs, right? You can invent a new technology, but it comes with consequences. And so some of the questions we said are really good to ask is, when it comes to adopting a new piece of technology, is what is the problem that this new piece of tech is going to solve? Great question. If it's not going to solve anything, what's the point of using it? But it's going to solve a bunch of problems. Fantastic. What new problems does this piece of technology create after it's solved these other ones, all right? How best to use it then if there are all these possible trade-offs? And so today we're going to come one level down from the sort of high-level thing of all technology, and we're going to look at really smartphones in particular, screens, scrolling, smartphone life. What is it doing to us, more or less by nature of what it is and how it operates? So next week we'll touch on engaging with truth and news and social media, friendship, relationships, community on social media the week after, even more sort of content the week after that. We're almost chatting about the form that we are receiving digital media in, and we're asking, what are the trade-offs? What is it doing to us? Here's a great quote from Jen Pollock-Michelle. She is one of the contributors to Scrolling Ourselves to Death, a great book I'd recommend. She said this: "Ask not what your tool does for you. Ask what your tool makes of you." Super helpful. Winston Churchill, he's also got lots of great quotes out there. He said this. Here it comes on the screen. "We shape our buildings. Thereafter, they shape us." Very, very insightful quote with regards to how technology that we make ends up making us into particular types of people. The one book I do want to recommend this week, no longer think I'm going to recommend a book every week, but the book I am going to recommend, I mentioned it last week, Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation. It's brilliant. It is not a Christian book, but it's all about how scrolling and screen time and social media has led to an epidemic of mental illness, particularly among Gen Z, so anybody pretty much in the room who's under 30, but also it's affected all of us. And last week I tried to convince you with stats from both the Western world and the South African world that actually it's not an epidemic, it's a global pandemic. We have the problem here as well. So it's a great book, but in the middle of the book, in chapter 8, he's got a chapter, which I was fascinated by the title, called Spiritual Elevation and Degradation. And here's a quote from that chapter. It says, "What is happening to us? How is technology changing us? Most of my research since 2014 has been an effort to answer those questions. Along the way, I have found inspiration and insight from an eclectic set of academic sources and from several ancient traditions. I think I can best convey what is happening to us as a human race by using a word rarely used in the social sciences: spirituality. The phone-based life produces spiritual degradation, not just in adolescence, but in all of us." And I found that quote extremely fascinating, and I found that whole chapter extremely fascinating. Let me show you a diagram here, because spirituality as a word, as a concept, has become very popular in the last 10, 20 years. If you're in Christian circles, often you've heard people say, identifying themselves as, I'm spiritual but not religious. Which is cool, but there's lots of spirits out there who really don't like you and disguise themselves as angels of light when meanwhile they're angels of darkness. And so I just want to say to you, that may not be good enough for your soul or helpful enough. But often people will also talk about secular spirituality. They will kind of use spirituality completely devoid of any actual spiritual realm. And that's kind of what Jonathan Haidt almost personally himself believes. This is just a diagram that he used to describe his version of spirituality. He calls it the 3 dimensions of social space. And he says, as people, there are people that we identify with on the x-axis by closeness. So there's people that we like to be close to and we are close to, and people we're further away from, we're more distant. On the y-axis, there are people that we recognize are due kind of our deference. We should defer to them. We should submit to them. They're our leaders, whatever it is. And there's a bit of an axis there of a hierarchy of who is where. Then he has this other interesting z-axis, which he calls divinity. Let me just read another quote from him. He says this: "There's another vertical dimension shown on the z-axis coming..." Oh, you can go back to the diagram, sorry. Oh, no, sorry, I'm talking nonsense. You can put the quote up. I was awake at 3:30 this morning, confession. I call it the divinity axis because so many cultures wrote explicitly that virtuous actions bring one upward, closer to God, while base, selfish, or disgusting actions bring one downward, away from God, sometimes toward an anti-divinity, such as the devil. Whether or not God exists, people simply do perceive some people, places, actions, and objects to be sacred, pure, and elevating, and other people, places, actions, and objects are disgusting, impure, and degrading, meaning literally brought down a step. He says, Christians ask, what would Jesus do? Yes, we do. Secular people can think of their own moral exemplar. And then I just love this. He said, I should point out that I'm an atheist, but I find that sometimes I need words and concepts from religion to understand the experience of life as a human being. This is one of those times. Again, it was a fascinating chapter. And I want to tell you, his idea of divinity and spirituality is legit, and he's just looking for the final step of the answer, which is yes, it's Jesus. He makes perfect sense. The Christian worldview makes perfect sense of the human experience of life. It's Jesus that provides us deep motivation to be able to combat spiritual degradation, pursue what he calls spiritual elevation. It's the wisdom of the scriptures that gives us so many resources to guide us in life. And so I think Jonathan Haidt's onto something. He's just missing the mark completely, if those can be held together. So here's the plan for today. I'm just breaking it down under CSI, Crime Scene Investigation. First up, Christian spirituality. I'm just going to take a stab from Ephesians 5 at differentiating what true Christian spirituality is about. What's the Christian worldview about? What's the goal? What's the aim? Then this is when we'll go into the existential pit of despair that I spoke about last week. And we'll just look at scrolling and screen time, what it's doing to us, what are the effects. And then we'll end literally just with 5 minutes of super practical ideas of how you and I, as a community and as individuals, can intentionally resist the deforming that is happening to us. And I'm literally just going to give us 16 one-liners of practical ideas that we can move towards. So, everyone good for that? Let's do this. Point 1, Christian spirituality. And this really is for everybody in the room. Whether you're a Christ follower, whether you are not a Christ follower, I want to invite you to lean in. The Bible teaches, you can see it in Ephesians 5 there, human beings are created and called to essentially participate in the divine life of God. That's the language that Peter actually uses. Paul in Ephesians 5 refers to it as the life of love, the experience of light. And so you could say Christian spirituality, what we're talking about there, is a lived experience of a personal relationship with the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit, the triune God of the Bible. That's my little diagram there, which I hope is helpful. We're meant to get caught up into their life, caught up into their ways, caught up in their mission. We're invited into closeness with them, into their presence, out of which we're called to be imitators of God our Father, verse 1 from our passage, to walk as children of light, verse 8, to walk in love as Jesus the Son has done, verse 2, to be filled with the Holy Spirit, verse 18. You'll see why I can't just have the scripture up there. We're called to pursue the will of God, figure out what is pleasing to God, verses 17 and 10. As creator and as a good father, his ways are set up for human flourishing. If you're not a Christ follower here today, I need you to hear this. The Christian God is for you. He wants the best for you. He loves you, and he wants to pull you out of anything that would degrade you as a human and bring you into the life of the Spirit. He defines what is good and right and true. Verse 9. God desires human flourishing. And Paul assumes all of this is actually a community project. The whole chapter and the whole book, really, he uses the plural. We. Children, not child. It's a communal project. And we sum this up in our church. Spirituality looks like this next slide here. It's basically our definition of discipleship. Is presence, formation, mission, done in community. Presence, we're meant to be in the presence of God. By being in the presence of God, submitting ourselves to God's ways and his projects, we are formed into his likeness, and we are deployed to do the things that Jesus did and has called us to do. Be on mission. And we are bound together in that whole thing with each other in community, locking us in as a family of God. And the Christian God, I want to say, the next slide's going to go back to Jonathan Haidt's diagram. He's so onto it. He defines the Christian God in this diagram. The Christian God is the ultimate at the top of the hierarchy. He is the creator God. He is ultimately sovereign. I'm just missing that alarm, which I don't know what it's for. Turn your phones on silent. He is the top of that axis. No one is more superior than God. Every knee will bow to God. He's top dog. It's creator and creation. Everyone else is distinct from him. He's right up there, and yet he is also way down on the y-axis. He's the one that invites us into the most close, most personal, most intimate relationship, which is why Haidt is 100% right. That's where we're going, because that's where God is, on that side of that diagram. But the truth is, in the age we find ourselves in, The default setting for human beings is not to live there, it's to live down here. That's what the Bible says. That's what Ephesians 5 says. It says we're caught in darkness. Darkness. Theologians often will refer to the unholy Trinity. So not Father, Son, and Spirit, but the world, the flesh, and the devil. These three things are trying to pull us down, rob us of true humanity, spiritually and physically even sometimes degrade us, to make us subhuman, to basically make them like they are and feel the consequences and suffer the same consequences that they will. Okay, the spiritual condition of sin has darkened human hearts, makes us caught up here and not appreciate the God of the Bible. In verse 16 of Ephesians 5 that we read, Paul talks about the days being evil. That might sound like a strange phrase to you, but in the course of the whole letter, Paul is referring to basically life in this world apart from God. Life in this world apart from God. Back in chapter 2, he speaks to Christians and says, "You were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, your flesh, your sin, following the course of this world, the culture that lives on the flesh and lives on sin, trying to influence us, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit of disobedience, now at work, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience." That is the devil, who is using the world to appeal to our flesh, to pull us down and harm us. And so human beings are trapped in that condition. We're under, verse 6 says, the wrath of God. And there's an active level where God will punish sin in our lives. He will ultimately punish sin in this world for good. But there's also the sort of passive wrath of God, where he essentially just hands us over to the consequences of our decisions, to the consequences of our sin and the consequences of our folly. And we reap what we sow as we get pulled down. And the bottom line is we need help to get outside of this, to get outside of darkness, free. We're unable. That's what the Bible says. And that is exactly why Jesus came and died on the cross, in order to bring us into relationship with God, in order to move us from being children of darkness into being children of light. Paul says in verse 2, Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Christ took on all the darkness of the unholy Trinity upon himself, had sin punished in himself. He stood in our place so that by faith in him, we could receive and be caught up into the life of the Father and the Son and the Spirit. We call this good news. I think it's good news. We think it's good news. We call it the gospel. Presence Formation Mission Community with the gospel at the center. The gospel is the center of everything we believe as Christians. It's the center of our spiritual lives because everything flows from this. And you've got one example in our passage here. Paul says in verse 2, walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. Be motivated. Recognize that the life God's calling us to live of love is because God first loved us. We don't just love because we're great. No, we love because God has been amazing towards us. The gospel is our motivation. That's Christian spirituality. That's my attempt to kind of summarize the Christian faith and what some would call spirituality. And if you're here and you don't subscribe to this hasn't been your worldview today, I want to urge you right now to seriously consider Jesus in your life. We exist as a church. We've started this new church for people like you to introduce you to the person of Jesus, who we believe is the way, the truth, and the life. And we want to invite you. Your first step would be to say yes to him, to hand your life over to him, to hand your sin, your rebellion, your turning away from him into his hands, and let him give you adoption. Let him give you the Holy Spirit living in your heart. Let him give you a whole new trajectory and quality of spiritual life, and find a whole new family of people who are following after their good Father who has good things for us. That's the invitation. But I still want to invite you to lean in now, as I'm going to specifically talk to Christ followers about our spirituality, about our walking out of our faith in the digital age. And we're going to ask some of those good questions that we spoke about last week. And we're going to ask some good questions that come out of Ephesians 5. Basically, we're asking, on the whole, is this little guy on the whole leading us towards spiritual elevation and the life of God, or actually down to spiritual degradation and a life of darkness that's hurting us? And so here's the three questions that, if you look at Ephesians 5, will emerge. Number one, from verse 6, am I being discerning? Am I being discerning? And that's a big question we'll even hit for the whole time almost next week when we tackle social media and news and truth. Verse 7, am I walking as a child of light? Am I walking as a child of light? And thirdly, verse 15 to 16, am I being wise with my time or wasting it? We're called to make the best use of the time because the days are evil. Put those three questions in the back of your head. That's what we're going to just kind of weigh up now as we consider scrolling and screen time. That's point 2. Here we go. And as a helpful grid, just for you to evaluate for yourself as I walk through some of these things, here is a little bit of, spiritual degradation, spiritual elevation, dark and light. There's a bunch of words that I think come out of our text and a few others that would help us. What are we talking about? What is darkness? What are the things that pull us down, that hurt us, that Satan wants to lure us into? Lust, sexual immorality, sensuality, division, envy, covetousness, jealousy, anger, anxiety, depression, impulsiveness, foolishness, pride. If you hear things that are leading in that direction, let that send a little ting off in your head. On the other side, what's God wanting for us? What's the invitation for us? To be a happy and healthy and whole community, it's things like wisdom, humility, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So I've said, we're going to go into the pit of existential despair right now. And you might think I'm being incredibly negative, but we love Apple smartwatches if you've got them, more than Temu smartwatches. We're not anti-technology. We're not even anti-smartphones. But what I want to say is we've all adopted smartphones and all the stuff that's on there because we already think it's good and helpful and we like it. So we know all the good stuff. What we're not always cognizant of or honest about with ourselves is the negative side. And that's why this is going to feel unbalanced, because we need to do ourselves a favor and tip the scales here. It solves lots of problems, our smartphone. It gives us access and connection to lots of people. It gives us tons of information, but we're actually suffering from information gluttony. That's what Brett McCracken says. We're getting too much, too fast, too focused on me, and it's ultimately hurting us in so many ways. Did you know that every 15 minutes, humanity creates 100 times more content online than words we have spoken since the dawn of time? That's insane. That's insane. So, let's do this. Let's jump into what I'm calling the 7 Ds of death, destruction, degradation, despair. You choose your word, okay? Here we go. Number 1, it's getting things off on a light note. Depression, anxiety, and stress. Depression, anxiety, and stress. I put up a whole bunch of graphs last week. Let me just refer to 2 of them. The first is the undergraduates in the US. We've got very similar things happening across university campuses and young adults here in South Africa. Since the advent of the smartphone has come in, boom, anxiety and depression above other mental health disorders has absolutely skyrocketed. The next slide will show it by age. You will see that Gen Z has been particularly affected over here. But even in 2022, if you're 25, 26, 34, you are seriously getting affected regarding anxiety, but also things like depression. The bottom line is, there's lots of reasons why this is the case. That's what we're going to talk about now. We know it's doing it to us, but why? Plenty of reasons. Tons of the D's that we're going to talk about now are also feeding into it, as well as stuff we'll talk about in the future. But here's just one main thing. The sheer amount of information coming at us and our sort of propensity to go from work to a friend's WhatsApp to the YouTube video that our friend sent, and then scroll down because there was some suggested things on YouTube, and then check the news, and then go back to work, is altering our brain chemistry. It's altering our brain chemistry. Daniel Levitin, he's a neuroscientist. I think I have the quote on the screen, maybe not. He says this: Asking the brain to shift the attention from one activity to another causes the prefrontal cortex and striatum to burn up oxygenated glucose, the same fuel they need to stay on task. And the kind of rapid, continual shifting we do with multitasking causes the brain to burn through fuel so quickly that we feel physically exhausted and disoriented after even a short time. We've literally depleted the nutrients in our brain. This leads to compromises in both cognitive and physical performance. Among other things, repeated task switching leads to ding, 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 anxiety, which raises levels of the stress hormone cortisol in the brain, which in turn can lead to aggressive and impulsive behavior. Not being in self-control, not being peaceful, loving, and kind. Bottom line is, brain rot is literally happening to us. And you might feel like you're using your phone or your apps for a whole bunch of virtuous purposes, and that may be the case. That's not the point. The point is it's still harming you. You can use radiation. I'm not a doctor, but I know you can use radiation to do x-rays, and that's helpful. But if you spend your life exposed to radiation, it'll kill you. And that's what is happening. Brett McCracken, who wrote the Wisdom Pyramid, said this: we burden ourselves with overwhelming amounts of unnecessary, often troubling information, from WebMD diagnoses to individual problems of hundreds on social media to tragedies across the globe, to the smartwatch health stats, which we are grateful for. Not all this information is bad, but the cumulative effect is deadly. Mental health being affected. And this morning I just thought about physical health, right? Physios, thank you, Hein, are seeing so many more patients because of our bad posture and idiots like me watching The Walking Dead on a smartphone in bed with your neck twisted like that. And I'm glad we can give you business, man. But it's pulling us down. Depression, anxiety, stress. It equals spiritual degradation. Number 2, dopamine addiction. If you don't know, dopamine, it's a pleasure chemical in your brain that gets released and is extremely addictive, okay? People are tempted to think that our phones are just small TVs in our pocket, that they are doing some of the things that TVs are to us. The TVs are pretty much hardly doing anything to us these days compared to our phones. They're not small TVs in our pockets. They are digital syringes of dopamine that we are taking hits with. Andrew Huberman defines addiction as the following: the progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. I find that super helpful. Addiction is also just knowing that something is bad for you and not being able to stop. Knowing, touching your phone and checking it is bad for you, but we cannot stop. And in the book Dopamine Nation, they basically explain it. What's happening in your brain with dopamine is your brain is like a seesaw. You've got pleasure on one side and pain on the other, to put it crudely, and your brain is trying to maintain equilibrium. What's happening when you are filling it with dopamine from all sorts of exciting content and things, which I'll chat about now, is you are pushing the pleasure side of your seesaw right down. But what has to happen is your brain needs to find equilibrium. And so what happens is when it's so far down, when it pulls it, trying to pull it back to equilibrium, the crash is absolutely ridiculous. The crash is giving us stress, depression, irritability, insomnia, and dysphoria as a result of just dopamine messing our brains and our brains trying to self-regulate. And our phones are just a dopamine world. Social media, pornography, gaming, gambling. We are literally faced with pathological temptation all the time right in front of us. In the old days, you wanted to get drunk, or still these days, you want to get drunk, you go to a bar. You want to see naked women, you go to the strip club. You want to gamble, you go to the casino. We're literally living in those places and thinking we're going to be okay, and thinking we're going to be survived, so we're going to survive, and thinking we're going to be pulled up into the divine life of God instead of being pulled down. It's almost impossible. And the problem is, the more you repeat a dopamine-releasing behavior, like checking something or clicking on something or scrolling, the greater the tolerance becomes. The greater the tolerance becomes. The pleasure is not satisfying. And the most fascinating thing I found about dopamine was this. The dopamine high actually comes from uncertainty and not the victory. It comes from uncertainty and not the victory. So in other words, it's the anticipation of a dopamine hit that creates more pleasure than the actual reward itself. We're on our phones asking, what might I get next? What might I find next? Which is why that's what's happening in our brains, in our neurochemistry, which is why it's so much easier to, let's look for another woman in lingerie. Let's scroll for another funny or interesting video. Let's just get to the next checkpoint in the game. Let's just check my likes, check my comments, check this, swipe left, swipe right, keep scrolling on Temu. Watches are bad. Move to iPhone. Bet again. It's that anticipation which is causing us to be unable to break free. And unfortunately, the great appeal of short-form video content, like TikTok kind of pioneered, and now it's everywhere, YouTube Shorts, you name it, it's the brevity that allows you to keep pushing down the seesaw quickly. It's not a glorious 3-hour, 15-minute avatar experience, which is way better for your brain than next one, next one, next one, next one. That's what's killing us. And when you lose, here's the thing, when you don't get the reward, when you get a lame video, or when you're unsatisfied with what you just saw, it just sends you back to get the hit. Swipe, 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 swipe. Social media in particular, most of us know this. The companies literally design it to get dopamine spikes to keep your attention. It's literally designed that way. And the bottom line is, I've realized it myself, our life group, we were chatting about it, most of us are actually addicts who don't even realize how little self-control we possess. We all kind of agreed to a degree on life group on Wednesday. We said, we all know we have a problem. We just need to start doing something about it. That's pretty much the definition of an addict. I know I've got a problem and I can't stop it. So we need help. We need God's help, right? We literally are just picking this up all the time for no reason. Dopamine addiction equals spiritual degradation. Most of the next are a bit quicker than that. Number 3, decision and commitment paralysis. Okay? We now have Netflix, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, Amazon Prime, you name it. We've got everything on streaming, on demand. We can choose what we want, and the overabundance of choices often paralyzes us. There's a phrase for it. They call it Netflix paralysis. It's a real thing. What will I watch, and will I watch the right thing? And that's why for date night sometimes you can spend an hour just deciding what you're going to watch, and then everyone's tired, like, stuff it, let's just watch this short thing. That's how it goes down. Here's the problem. This is how human spirituality, how we are formed, is that what has happening in one area of our life does affect other areas of our lives. That's why we need to have a sort of full frontal sort of assault on all fronts. Because what's happening to us in that space of overabundance, of choice, it's making us more passive, it's making us more self-centered, and that completely affects other areas of our life. We think and start to assume that that's how life is, and it inadvertently shapes us. It happens to our approach to church and spirituality. We start to see it as a fluid thing, as a consumer, with tons of churches that you can go to, you can drift out of this, go here, go here. It completely works against commitment. It's totally rewiring us away from commitment in relationships in particular. I just thought, here's an example for marriage. There's actually so many things in marriage that I can think of about how all these things are working together and how they're working to kill your marriage. Just consider this. The medium itself is shaping a generation away from being able to stay in committed marriages, all right? Not just because we can flirt with other people online 1,000,000 times easier than you could back in the day, not just because we can watch porn and it makes us dissatisfied or whatever we consume, not just because we see the lives of other people, often single people or whatever, who are free and doing this and yalla, and it's exciting and tempting, but on top of all of that, literally the act of scrolling, screen time itself, has wired our brains for perpetual novelty, right? Dopamine spikes, as we've said, on-demand consumerism, all of which is turning our brains away from the type of brains and people that can actually sustain a marriage. I think that's part of the marriage stats in our culture. Decision and commitment paralysis equals spiritual degradation. Are we feeling full of despair? Good. Number 4, deprivation of sleep. I wasn't deprived of sleep last night because I was up on my phone late last night. Mitch can attest to it this time. I was trying to go to bed early. I just needed to wake up to finish this, thanks to some people being in hospital yesterday. But the bottom line is, we're cool, we're chilled. The bottom line is, I'll pay for it later though. The bottom line is, our screens have caused, not are causing, have caused a decline in both quantity and quality of sleep. Quantity, because the stats are in, and most of us will know this, we are kept up between 30 minutes, sometimes 2 hours longer than necessary, just by watching stuff, gaming, scrolling. Guilty as charged, Murray said, Kyle, please can you share this one? So I will share it. Not only will I watch the Arsenal game at 9:30, 10 at night, not great, but hey, I can go to bed before midnight, not bad. After the game, I can then spend probably up to an hour on a YouTube channel called AFTV, Arsenal Fan TV, and just watch all the guys ranting about everything that the coach did wrong and who did this and who didn't score there. When I got my YouTube stats report or whatever at the end of last year, I'm proud to say I was in the top 3% of Arsenal Fan TV viewers in the world. There are 1.8 million of us on that channel, and I was in the top 3%. I'm doing better. I watched Arsenal drew 0-0 last night. I was depressed, and I got straight into bed, and I didn't listen to anybody rant. So there's quantity of sleep, but there's also quality of sleep because of the mental stimulation in those last 30 minutes to 2 hours before we go to bed. It's giving us way worse sleep. And the effects of sleep deprivation are massive. It's well studied. Depression, anxiety, irritability, cognitive defects, deficits, same thing. Poor learning, right? More accidents, more death because of accidents. And I admit, I've noticed, I've seen it in the last few months, and that's why I didn't watch AFTV last night. I've seen how it affects my ability to just be a good dad. Because I know by the time I get to 6 p.m. in a day, my kid is rightfully wanting my attention. I'm exhausted, I'm irritable, I'm not the best version of myself. In my head, maybe even to Mish, I'm complaining about needing me time. This is too much. The problem is, I had me time the night before. It was crap me time, and now I'm paying for it because I was up late last night watching AFTV, and I'm being a bad dad. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. So I've just realized our phone use as parents and potential parents is maybe as important as the amount of screen time our kids are getting. We're all concerned as parents, and if you're going to be parents, it's coming your way. Screen time is a big conversation right now for kids. How do we manage it? How do we not? How do we just get rid of it? Our screen time is also as much to blame. Number 5, distraction and disembodiment. Somewhere, I heard them say, we are forever elsewhere. We are forever elsewhere. It takes between 8 and 23 minutes to fully re-engage with a task after being distracted, right? It's literally, our phones are literally affecting the executive function of our brain. What it means is, probably most of us, if not all of us in the room, are not engaging well in our work. We're not as focused as we should be, which is likely causing more underlying stress, meaning work is taking longer than it should, which then impacts other areas of our lives, right? How often do we say, I've had a hectic week, which may be true, but more likely is the possibility that it's being caused by your phone, not by your actual week. Because your whole body and brain is absolutely depleted and exhausted. You can't work as well, you can't think as well, you can't relate as well. When it comes to distraction, McCracken said this, the opposite of wisdom in the Proverbs is personified by the forbidden woman. She works by the power of suggestion, as do our watch next, click here, suggested for you links. When we browse and scroll, we are digital wanderers, and that is dangerous. When we aren't going somewhere, we will go anywhere. And the anywheres of the digital age are dangerous. And I think that is part of the supernatural behind the scenes of doom scrolling. There is chemical things that are happening with doom scrolling, and I think that's what we call the world, right? The devil is working in that to consistently undermine us. And it's also impacting our most intimate relationships. We'll talk about this more in 2 weeks' time. But instead of being present with friends, present with our families, our children, our spouses, we're present with the hordes demanding our time and attention. We make ourselves think we're so important that we have to check our phones all the time, otherwise the world will fall apart. And that's why we are taking work home with us into our personal lives, losing all sets of boundaries and costing our personal relationships. We're distracted and disembodied. That is spiritual degradation. 2 more, very quickly. Dissatisfaction. It's happening from dopamine in our brains. As I said, it literally makes us dissatisfied and wanting more. But also just the sheer exposure to every single thing the world has to offer, right? Literally. It exposes you to every single thing the world has to offer. Your lifestyle, travel, clothes, gadgets, relationships, everything, you name it, you're exposed to it all the time. And you're also exposed to what other people are doing and how they are apparently living their lives and what they have and what you don't. And it just perpetuates envy and jealousy and covetousness, which Paul says is idolatry. It is not a default setting causing us gratitude and thankfulness. Lastly, diminished awe and wonder. Diminished awe and wonder. Digital worlds, they just literally cause us to lose wonder because they are entertaining all the time. And real life and the real world is not entertaining all the time. And you might say, yeah, that's why I go there. The data's in. Entertainment and information all the time is killing us. We were not made for it. We were made to live in harmony with the real physical world and creation that God has set up for us. In rhythm with the seasons, in rhythm with the weeks, in rhythm with nature, in rhythm with our bodies, in rhythm with each other, in rhythm with God. That's what we are called to. And I found this tweet ages ago, and I banked it for this series. I found it like 3 years ago from Gavin Ortland. It was on he tweeted it. The ancients stared at stars most nights. We stare at screens most nights. Stars make the world feel huge. They remind us we are tiny. Screens often make the world feel small. They make us feel connected to everything. And I wonder how much this contributes to our anxiety. Screens and the internet make us think we're God because we think we can be omnipresent everywhere and full of control, which is a total illusion. It's a total illusion. We're meant to feel small and vulnerable. That is the reality. So not only might it be fueling anxiety, it's fueling human pride in our hearts, in our minds. We need the grandeur of nature. And I'm not the most nature guy, so I'm speaking to myself here. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim his handiwork. FIFA doesn't necessarily do that. The heavens do. And if we're not seeing it, if we've lost our awe and wonder of creation, then we've lost our awe and wonder in the one of whom that creation is pointing towards. We're made by God for experiences of self-transcendence. And this little guy is just making us self-conscious all the time. Diminished awe and wonder, spiritual degradation. I hope you are full of despair. Our questions. Am I being discerning? Am I walking as a child of light? Am I being wise with my time or wasting it? I want to say to us, we're in a full-blown crisis. And I say it to myself, life group, we'll see you on Wednesday. Remind me of what I'm saying for myself here and my family. We're in a full-blown crisis, and this isn't even the full picture. And I want to just point us to verses 14 and 16 in Ephesians 5, where the writer says, Awake, awake, O sleeper, arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. If we can wake up, if we can recognize this, if we're not lulled by our addictions and everything happening to us, if we can wake up and push back on the onslaught of darkness, the light of Christ will shine on us. That's the promise. The light of God will break in. It will mend things. It will heal brains. It will remove anxiety. There is a better future for us. If we can agree, we need to wake up and get help from God and each other. If we can resist the darkness. And God wants us to do that. So here's point 3, intentional resistance. I literally say this is going to be 16 one-liners of very practical ideas. Okay? It's going to take 5 minutes and then we're done. Number 1, and we'll send it out on life group guides. If you're not in a life group, get in a life group. Please, genuinely, sign up. We'd love to have you in a life group. You need people around you. You can't do this on your own. Number 1, ask for feedback from your spouse, from your friends, your group. How's my digital life? How's my digital life? What are you seeing? Number 2, some of you already are like, oh crap. Number 2, work together. Okay, the more, honestly, Sam was reminding me of this yesterday. The more we can get each other in on this, the more we can ask people to hold us accountable to things. Did you delete that thing? Did you install that thing? Whatever it might be. Playing roles, joining in, the easier it will be. The problem is when you're the only person trying to, stop the tide, that's when it's a struggle. When there's a whole bunch of us, it becomes so much easier. The culture is shifted. So let's keep having good conversations with each other. I'm getting involved in our preschool now around figuring out what phone-free childhoods could look like, or at least somewhere on that spectrum. Chat in life groups. Number 3, practice digital Sabbaths and fasts. A lot of what the rest of it will say is what this could look like. A digital Sabbath is basically putting your phone, making a commitment and doing it, putting your phone away for 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. Most likely on the weekend, because that's when you definitely won't need it. A digital fast is basically an extended period of time where you're not putting your phone in a box, because that won't work, and you'll get fired, many of you. But it's not putting your phone in a box, but it's being super intentional about putting it in its place. Let's put it that way. And a lot of the things now are what we're going to encourage us to do as a community when we corporately do a digital fast for Lent. So the dates are 18th of Feb to the 2nd of April. We're going to corporately digital fast together. You're invited into it. I'm not going to force you. You've got to say yes to it. We're going to put out a guide in 2 weeks' time that will be filled with lots of ideas, things you can work through, things you can figure out your time with. So that's what's coming. Here's a bunch of ideas. But please hear me on this. This issue is not a minor problem. I hope we're realizing that. So a minor solution is not going to help. A minor solution is not going to help. We need major solutions. We need to put multiple things in place, big things in place. We can work up to them, but don't just think turning the one thing off is going to help much. Here we go. Here's more ideas. Move your phone 60 centimeters further away from you than it normally is. Research shows that stops the ability for you to just grab it habitually, which is going to help rewire your brain because it's just a little bit more out of reach. And that's going to be hard enough. At night, put it on the other side of the room before getting into bed or in another room entirely. We're having conversations about what we're going to do about that. Number 6, get an alarm clock. I've ordered mine from Temu. Or get a Temu watch. Or a Samsung watch. That's $250, not bad. Whatever tells the time and can set an alarm, put that next to your bed. Don't use your phone as an alarm. Get a pen and a paper and a torch, because many of us have the excuse of we're just falling asleep, or we wake up and we've got that idea that's going to change the world, or we've got that thing in our head that we're super worried we're going to forget and we're going to get in trouble, and we need to jot it down on a note. Go back to bed. It's going to help us. Phones off your person during certain times. Dates, family meals, maybe even coffees with people. Put it on the kitchen counter, have only phone calls turned on, stick it in your bag. Number 8. Murray, did you say you took off notifications? Someone said it. Said it's been hugely helpful, right? Take off notifications on your phone. Go to your phone when you need it, not when it needs you. Go to your phone when you need it, not when it needs you. Set your phone to grayscale. Color often makes your phone just more attractive, more addictive. I tried this a lot during the holidays. I must admit, on holiday, it gets frustrating when you're taking pictures and everything looks like arty black and white, you're like, but I do want to see like how bad the sunburn is or whatever. But set your phone to grayscale. It is helpful. Number 10, remove distraction apps or set timer limits. Some apps are utility apps. Your clock, your weather app, whatever. Tons of the rest are distraction apps. Social media, YouTube, all that stuff. Either remove them, I've removed most of mine, or set timers on them. So once you've hit a 30-minute limit, your phone will tell you, and likely, if you can set it up this way, block you out from using that app. And I heard that there's a couple in this church who have put the passwords on it, and only the other person has the password. So once you've run out of 20 minutes of Instagram or YouTube, you're stuffed, and you got to ask your spouse, and they're going to say no. And I can see some spouses giggling, which is beautiful. Number 11, this is remove apps. Also, download helpful resistance apps. So there's apparently an app that you can, I don't know if it's paid or not, but you can stop your YouTube from showing you all the other suggested things. Johnny sends you a funny YouTube video on WhatsApp. Probably don't open it, but if you are addicted and you're full of dopamine, you're going to click open on it. At least you'll just watch that video and not see all the next videos that you could hit. Another one is Covenant Eyes. It's a software that helps screen out and filter sexual content, sensual content. It's not perfect, but it's super, super helpful. It flags any potential content to mates who can then message you and whatever. Number 12, have email and WhatsApp slots in your day. Don't just consistently go back to it. I'm going to return to this. I used to have it when I was in students ministry. It was life-giving. I had 2 slots for an hour each day. That's when I did WhatsApps. The rest of the time, I was a human. And it was incredible. So I want to encourage you. If it's urgent, ask people to call. And here we go. Super quick. Prioritize long form over short-term content. Watch Avatar, Fire, and Ash. Get off TikTok, basically. Invite me to Avatar, Fire, and Ash. Pay for my ticket, and I'll join you. 14, prioritize nature, as we've said. And 2 more mantras for us this year. Scroll less, read more. That's one of the best things you can trade your scrolling for, is reading more. And lastly, scroll less, pray more. And I found this super helpful. I was taking my phone into the kids' bedroom and I was putting them to sleep, and as they were lulling off quietly, I could check things. I've stopped doing that, and if you do sit in the dark, there's nothing else to do, you can pray. And I've done it, and it's way better for me. That's how we can resist.